Gateman's Gift by R.K. Narayan. When a dozen persons questions openly or slyly a man's sanity, he begins to entertain serious doubts himself. This is what happened to ex-gateman Govind Singh. And you couldn't blame the public either. What could you do with a man who carried about in his hand a registered postal envelope and asked, "Please tell me what there is inside"? The obvious answer was, "Open it and see." He seemed horrified at this suggestion. "Oh, no, no, can't do it," he declared, and moved off to another friend and acquaintance. Everywhere the suggestion was the same, till he thought everyone had turned mad. And then somebody said, "If you don't like to open it and yet want to know what is inside, you must take it to the X ray Institute." This was suggested by an ex compounder who lived in the next street. "What is it?" asked Govind Singh. It was explained to him. "Where is it?" He was directed to the City X-ray Institute. But before saying anything further about his progress, it would be useful to go back to an earlier chapter in his history. After war service in 1914 to 18, he came to be recommended for a gatekeeper's post at Englandias. He liked the job very much. He was given a khaki uniform, a resplendent band across his shoulder, and a short stick. He gripped the stick and sat down on a stool at the entrance to the office. And when his chief's car pulled up at the gate, he stood up at attention and gave a military salute. The office consisted of a staff numbering over 100, and as they trooped in and out every day, he kept an eye on them. At the end of the day, he awaited the footsteps of the general manager coming down the stairs and rose stiffly and stood at attention. And after he left, the hundreds of staff poured out. The doors were shut. Singh carried his stool in, placed it under the staircase, and placed his stick across it. Then he came out, and the main door was locked and sealed. In this way, he had spent 25 years of service, and then he begged to be pensioned off. He wouldn't have thought of retirement yet, but for the fact that he found his sight and hearing playing tricks on him. He couldn't catch the manager's footsteps on the stairs. It was hard to recognize him even at 10 yards. He was ushered into the presence of the chief, who looked up for a moment from his papers and muttered, "We are very pleased with your work for us, and the company will give you a pension of 12 rupees for life." Singh clicked his heels, saluted, turned on his heel, and went out of the room, his heart brimming with gratitude and pride. This was the second occasion when the great man had spoken to him, the first being on the first day of his service. As he had stood at his post, the chief, entering the office just then, looked up for a moment and asked, "Who are you?" "I am the new gatekeeper, master," he had answered. And he spoke again only on this day, though so little was said. Singh felt electrified on both occasions by the words of his master. In Singh's eyes, the chief had acquired a sort of godhood, and it would be quite adequate if a god spoke to one only once or twice in a lifetime. In moments of contemplation, Singh's mind dwelt on the words of his master and on his personality. His life moved on smoothly. The pension, together with what his wife earned by washing and sweeping in a couple of houses, was quite sufficient for him. He ate his food, went out and met new friends, slept, and spent some evenings sitting at a cigarette shop which his cousin owned. This tenor of life was disturbed on the first of every month when he donned his old khaki suit, walked to his old office, and slammed the accountant at the counter and received his pension. Sometimes, if it was closing, he waited on the roadside for the journal manager to come down and saluted him as he got into his. There was a lot of time all around him, an immense sea of leisure. In this state, he made a new discovery about himself that he could make fascinating models out of clay and wood dust. The discovery came suddenly when one day a child in the neighborhood brought to him its little doll for repair. He not only repaired it but made a new thing of it. This discovery pleased him so much that he very soon became absorbed in it. His backyard gave him a plentiful supply of pliant clay, and the carpenter's shop next to his cousin's cigarette shop sawdust. He purchased paint for a few annas, and lo, he found his hours gliding. He sat there in the front part of his home, went over his clay, and brought into existence a miniature universe. All the colors of life were there, all the forms and creatures, but of the size of his middle finger. Whole villages and towns were there, all the persons he had seen passing before his office when he was a sentry there, that beggar woman coming at midday, and that cucumber vendor. He had the eye of a cartoonist for human faces. Everything went down into clay. It was a wonderful miniature reflection of the world, and he mounted them neatly on thin wooden slices which enhanced their attractiveness. He kept these in his cousin's shop, and they attracted huge crowds every day and sold very briskly. More than from the sales, Singh felt an ecstasy when he saw admiring crowds clustering around his handiwork. On his next pension day, he carried to his office a street scene which he ranked at as his best, and handed it over the counter to the accountant with the request, "Give this to the Sahib, please." "All right," said the accountant with a smile. It created a sensation in the office and disturbed the routine of office working for nearly half an hour. On the next pension day, he carried another model, "Children at Play," and handed it over the counter. "Did the Sahib like the last one?" "Yes, he liked it."